Hey everybody, welcome back to another MSP Live Chat brought to you by Ninja RMM. I'm Jonathan Crow. I'm Director of Content and Community here at Ninja RMM. I got with me Tom Watson, as always. Hey Tom, how you doing?
Great.
Tom is our Channel Chief Advisor at Ninja. And we're so excited to have Heather Johnson here from Gozynta. Heather, how's it going?
It's going great, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on.
So good to have you here. So good to have everybody in the chat. It's been a start of the new year. I think back to all those comments, the New Year's comments about 2020 being dead and like everybody killing it. Good riddance. And then other people pointing out, 2021, like it may not be the best immediately, at least. And sure enough, that's probably the case. I think this topic, if anything, the events of late tell me that this is a very important topic for all of us. This is going to be a marathon. We could all probably use some good advice around self-care, being able to separate ourselves, take time for ourselves, be able to focus, concentrate, all those things. And Heather, I'm so glad that you suggested this.
Yeah, it's an important topic, and one, I am certainly not somebody to come to for yoga poses or healthy eating. I am, I was forced to learn about self-care because I refused to do it. And so, I come to you with these little kind of tidbits that I was able to incorporate in my life, and hopefully they'll help you.
Absolutely. And so the yoga poses will go to Tom for those, of course. And Heather's put together, we've got a ton of resources. I dropped the agenda doc in the chat. Feel free to check that out. We call it an agenda doc. It's really just a loose list of anything we can dump anything in that's interesting or valuable as we're having this discussion. Of course, things can come from you guys too. And then you'll have this doc for even after this session to go back and follow along. We've taken turns, Heather, Tom, and I, in dropping in a ton of resources. This is a topic that both Heather and Tom very personally invested in. They have a ton to say about it, a ton of really great actionable tips. The whole thing about this is we want to leave people with, here's an idea of a small place to start, because I think we all know the MSP industry, not the most known for good self-care. I mean, we've all seen the Burnout posts that get posted on Reddit every month or so. And I'm sure a bunch of us on the call have felt this. So I want to address, before we dive in, I want to address a couple of things that have already come up in the comments. First of all, yes, this call is going to be recorded. In fact, as soon as we're done, you can instantly just press refresh and it'll take like a minute and then the recording will be up. I'll also put the recording link in the Google Doc, and then we'll send you emails with the recording link too, so you can relive this in all its magic and glory. Kelvin, our Microsoft MVP, our champion, tuning in from the Netherlands, where it's 10 p.m., I think. I'm so sorry. Usually we have our live chats at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. We want to do things a little bit differently. We have a ton of awesome partners in EMEA. We also have partners in Oceania, and I wanted to give them a chance because usually we go at 1 p.m. So that's kind of why they're scheduling. Thank you so much for anyone who is from EMEA who is staying up super late to watch this. And I did want to call up a couple other things. So speaking of staying up late, of course, we had New Year's. One thing that I did on New Year's Eve was spend a little bit of time with some people who are probably on the line. I see people from Your Sales Energy. I see Alex Farling. I'm not sure if Ray and the guys from OIT are on, and Sean, but they have something called the Tech Bar, which everybody can check out. It's relevant to this conversation too, because they set it up with all the lack of events, the lack of opportunities for people to get together at all the trade shows and events we usually go to and hang out at the bar. That wasn't happening last year, not going to be happening for a while anyway. So they created a show where they do that. I was on there for New Year's. I was actually on there previously too, and I want to share with you. I'm going to bring up the Google Doc and share with you something that I promised that I would share. It's also a little bit of a humble brag. So here we go. Here's our agenda doc that, again, everyone has the link to. I got awarded a prize, and you can't really see this, but it says I am the freeze tag champion. The reason they're doing that is because the first time they had me on, my computer froze like every 2 minutes, and I was like their special guest. And they ended up basically doing the show with me, like in awkward, like frozen poses every now and then. So I promised them that I would share that. The other thing I want to share is if for anybody who was on our end of year episode or session, live chat, whatever you want to call it, we gave away some prizes. And one of those prizes went to Kristen, who's been with us for months, who's been with us from the beginning of the live chats. And she was the lucky winner of 2 live lobsters that got sent to her. And so I'm going to bring up, she was kind enough to send video of what her cats thought about these lobsters. So I'm going to pull that up. I do have to mention she did have an experience where the first batch of lobsters they sent her, they're supposed to be live Maine lobsters, were not so live, and so she made that discovery and had to get another batch sent to her. But here's what Kristen's cats had to think about this this lobster. Not too sure what to think about that. Oh wait, here we go. I'll give you the full experience here. And while we're doing that, great webinar today. All right, so yeah, and lobsters were set free. That's right. So Rachel, our VP of marketing, she approved me giving prizes and approved lobsters after the fact. And Rachel loves all animals, dogs most of all, but lobsters. And I assured her that Kristen set the lobsters free after this. That did not happen. Anyway, I wanted to share those things just to kick things off, to kind of lighten the mood. But let's get down to it. Let's get to our real topic why we're here today. Let's talk about burnout, because it is a serious issue. I see this brought up all the time. I saw everybody who we were sharing this with mentioning like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are covering this. And Heather, this was all your idea. You brought this to me in a Slack group that we're a part of. I thought, yes, this is perfect, especially to start the year. Talk a little bit about why you thought this was an important thing.
Yeah, so I'm one that loves to add more stress on into my life. It really, before I started looking at ways to find ways to breathe, that would be the last thing that I'd want to do. I was an HR director, so I actually put a very high stake on that. Anybody that I worked with, I would talk about, are you eating? Are you sleeping enough? Let's start this meeting. You seem stressed out. Let's breathe together. But I wasn't doing any of it myself. I was like, that's not for me. I don't need it. I love stress. Give me more. Like, really, I thought I thrived off of it. I was taking a lot on at that time. I had organized for 9 months an art festival, 5-day art festival. I was arranging everything from food trucks to parking to street closures in Hartford to about 30 different art performers who came from all over the world, and then selling tickets and everything else, and then all the volunteers. It was a lot. The day after that, I was flown to DC because I was a co-organizer of an event that President Obama charged us with doing with Georgetown University, the Department of State, and the Department of Education. And that was an event that I think 5,000 people attended, and I flew 60 some odd people from all over the world, did all their visas. The day after that, I took 26 people throughout Southeast Asia, to Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, taking care of, I think we had 14 different flights that I booked, got transportation to places I had never been before. And that was in a 21-day period. During that also, I was a single mom and was in 2 master's programs. And I loved it. Like, my eye was twitching like you can't imagine. And I'm like, that's me living my life. And, but then, my mouth would twitch and I'm like, it's at such inconvenient times, like we're meeting the Indonesian president and my mouth is like, nah. But I didn't really slow down with that. When I got back from Southeast Asia, I was driving. Everything was good. I was singing my tunes. And all of a sudden, I thought I was having a heart attack. I was so sure I was dying that I could barely pull my car over. Luckily, there was an urgent care center, and my vision was actually going away. I'm a really big rule follower, still feel bad that I didn't even park my car. I just like left it and stumbled into the emergency center and was like, I'm dying. I am dying. And they were very great, brought me right in. And then they said, no, don't worry. You are having a panic attack. And I'm like, I don't have stress. I have no stress. And as she went through some of the things that I was doing, she's like, you think you have no stress with what you just told me? I'm like, oh. Um, and it really knocked me down. My level for what I could tolerate was a lot lower. That, that feeling of not being able to breathe and my heart racing came a lot quicker. So I actually had to recover for some time before I could take on some of the things very slowly that I did before. Um, but I am a person that loves to have a lot of things going on at all times. So I had to find ways that I could realistically include things into my life that would allow me to keep going at the level that I'm going at, and be able to teach that to our employees as we have Gozynta. I'm the chief operating officer here. Um, the mental health of the people that we work with are so important, as well as the owners. We all have to take care of ourselves. So 5-minute ways to take care of yourself are really just focused first off on just being intentional. I mean, I learned about breathing very early on in that. My husband always laughs at me because he thinks that I breathe funny, and I'm really still learning the breathing. But being intentional, and instead of I'm going to breathe now, and this is me when I do my breathing, I'm like, okay, I'm still breathing. It's taking that time and being very intentional. Putting a sign on the door, don't come in, I'm breathing. That sounds like a weird sign, but they'll get used to it. They'll get used to those signs, don't enter. um, Turning off your phone, all communications off. There is no email that needs to be answered right there. And important to do that because you need that time. And if you're saying, I can't, 5 minutes, I can't, the world is not going to go on without me for this 5 minutes, then you need to look at your procedures, and you need to look at cross training and making sure other people can fill in for you so you have 5 minutes. Last thing you want to have happen is end up in the emergency room trying to figure out how to get payroll done instead of worrying about getting healthy.
Yeah,
So
well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it gives such good context about why we're all here and why this is a good topic. I know Tom's got a ton to talk about this topic too. I mean, I can speak for myself personally. Like I totally have the eye twitch when I'm stressed out, and for so long I got by thinking, yeah, this is totally, I can handle this stuff. This taking time, being more mindful, doing something proactive about this is something for other people to deal with. And I think getting older to a certain point, like you can coast by less. I mean, Tom, like we were talking about how there's like an age range where like the Red Bull and like and like no sleep works for a while, but like not forever.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's a big thing of mine. And we were talking yesterday, I believe. I spent a lot of years on the road for another vendor, and I had some pretty serious burnout from that because I got in this habit of I was traveling for some type of speaking or trade show nearly every week, and then would just crash on the weekends, but would have these terrible habits during the week, and that didn't work well. And I really had to start establishing some boundaries with the work and with devices, and really regimenting my sleep and getting back into regular workout routines. And, I've carried those through, and they've been a really good grounding part of me. But I pay close attention to that because, like I was saying, once you get out of like your 30s, I've found that these, using the caffeine and as Jonathan said, not doing the sleep, it doesn't seem to work anymore. It just seems then to just wear on your health. And next thing you know, yeah, you end up at the doctor or at the ER with a multitude of health issues that are actually related to the decisions you're making.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing some suggestions for tools and apps. The fact alone that all these things are existing, I think says a lot. It's great to see that people are receptive to them now, but there's definitely a broad need for this. I mean, especially after last year, because things changed, right? We have work from home. People are out of their routines. People are not seeing friends and family. They're not having the typical outlets that they had to kind of get away from things. Work can stretch into all hours now, right? But I'm specifically interested for you, Tom. Maybe talk about your time as an owner specifically, because as an owner, I mean, you're expected to do everything, especially if you're just getting things off the ground. Um, and I think there's some of the resources we can talk about a little bit later, kind of get at this. But there's this culture and mindset around being an owner, especially in tech or anything involving tech, that like you're not supposed to sleep. You're supposed to sleep when you're dead. Like you're supposed to be this like, this like no sleeping warrior. It's like a badge of pride or something. Yeah. I mean, how did you handle things when you were an owner?
Yeah, absolutely. I look back and I'm sure there's many people with the same experience on here as MSP owners. That first few years of owning MSP, I took no vacations. I mean, it was 6 or 7 days of work every week, often 12-hour days. And I was doing everything. I mean, everything from, the technical work to management to bookkeeping and all of that. And then I found that, I ended up having to pass a lot of things on. Like for me, we were talking about the other day, I had to realize not only did I not like doing bookkeeping, I wasn't good at it. And so I had to start letting go of certain roles and responsibilities. And that allowed me to be better in other areas. But I'm a big believer in doing less and spending less time, especially on the things that you're not particularly good at or don't want to do. And that's kind of the first step in freeing up time and, enabling better self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring up while we're talking about this. I mean, there's obviously the bigger some bigger things that you have to change and some bigger underlying issues, right? Especially like you hinted at, where if you're an owner and you're having to take on all the roles, wear all the hats. I mean, there's some underlying things you need to do with processes and hiring. And until you get there, it is going to be really tough. But what I love about what Heather's done here, and this is this agenda doc that I pulled up, and I'll Slack this link again in case anyone missed it. There's a ton of resources here, and a lot of them are based all around like things you can do in 5 minutes. And so this is great. So this is part of a promo that a bunch of vendors have done that actually OIT and Lifecycle have rallied vendors to do. And Gozynta put this together, and Heather, you led the charge here. But you have these 8 very short 3-minute videos giving like a practical thing of here's a way to take 5 minutes to build this into your day, just to like build these little release valves, really, right? And then you've got a guide that goes along with it that kind of gets into a little bit more detail, and it's great. I love this. And so in addition to, so we got that in the chat. In addition to that, a ton of different articles, suggestions. I'm going to keep track of the tools, the apps that people are suggesting, because I've seen Headspace is one, Calm's another one. I'll add that in here too. But any other suggestions people have that's worked for them, definitely please share away. Yeah, Ray's talking about the sleeping element.
Yeah, that's huge. I had that same problem, Jonathan, and I was, I even went through this thing, and it's kind of shifted now. The importance of sleep, we all know about it. It makes it's in a lot of the media out there. But I had that thing too, Ray, where I was, sleeping 4 to 6 hours and telling everyone about it, and putting that expectation on others, but also not realizing I really wasn't performing well. Those hours would have been much better spent sleeping and then performing 100% when I was awake, rather than 50% because I'd slept 50% as much as I should have.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us have had those times where we're staring at a computer, like nodding off, at 1 a.m? It's like, what am I doing? I'm not getting any work done, really. I should just be asleep. Heather, what about another key part of this that you've really hit on that I thought was really important was this idea, going back to this idea again of all this stuff. It's easy to be like, okay, yeah, sure, I need to do it. Now is New Year's resolution time, right? And New Year's resolutions are famous for being dropped and not really working. you had some specific advice for how to make this actually happen, how to actually stick to these things.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to take all of them at once. One of the ones is, taking a walk or therapeutic yelling. You're not going to do all of those in one day, but there's times and places for all of those. And if you do look at those videos, you get to see me yell, which is not something that many people see, but now it's out there, so you can't pull it back. Um, but one of the things that I like to do is be aware of myself, because when we all start going and going, we kind of forget who we are and what we're doing. So taking that time to be aware, every day at 12 o'clock, I have a half an hour that is spent for just being aware. Now, I don't use that the whole time. I take that time and I'm like, okay, it's my time to check in with myself. And I literally think from head to toe, how am I doing? Am I okay? Am I hungry? Because sometimes, how many times have we forgotten we're hungry? Or even worse, we go get food and then you have an empty plate and you're like, I ate that. I don't even remember doing that. We're so not present in who we are and our body and making sure it's okay. It's important to have, that time. This is my time for myself to say, what do I need? Do I need to take a walk? Do I need to just lie on the floor and stare up at the ceiling for a while? That's called splat. There's a video of that too. And I am lying on a floor splatting. So, um, and encouraging that with other people. It's okay to take time for yourself. We all need that. And so setting that example of saying, yeah, I can't do a meeting at this point. This is my time where I just need to check in, and not shovel food down my throat, but actually enjoy the time of eating and enjoy the time and see what I need as a person. Because if we're not taking care of that, the rest of it's all going to fall apart.
Yeah, eventually, right? Like, and it can sneak up on you for sure. I mean, we have some of these in the doc too. We've got all the resources, but we started off with Heather provided some symptoms from burnout from the Cleveland Clinic, and just like the eye twitching thing. I mean, I ignored that for so long because again, it's just like you were saying, Heather. It's like, oh, I mean, okay, yeah, I got that, but I'm not really stressed out. But then it hits you, and it totally sneaks up on you. I love Ray in the comments saying that you take naps during the day when you need it. Ray, I can totally understand that, knowing that you're up at like 4 a.m. every day too. Ray's like the first one to say good morning in all these chat groups. Let's bring it back to working at an MSP or for an MSP specifically. Tom, we were talking about this in our prep call. This is a job where your time is being marked and accounted for, like by the minute. And we are suggesting that people take 5-minute breaks when they need to. And maybe when you're an owner, you can do that. But let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, how did you handle things with your employees? Was this an issue? Did you do anything in particular to try to promote people taking better care of themselves? How do you balance that as a business owner too, where you're trying to get people to be more efficient?
Yeah, this is a real problem because, I was rolling trucks and asking people to be at one place after another and deal with traffic and also take some time for yourself. And then I did things like pile on top of it with incentive pay where, if you got more work done, I was going to pay you more beyond what the general level of expectation was. And I found it very hard to balance what I'm asking them to do in terms of work wise and the increased money they could make with what, would be good self-care. And I found I had to put limits on it. Be like, okay, you can work up to this many hours and this many billable hours, but past that, I'm not paying you any extra. So it wasn't unlimited. They couldn't keep going with it and make more and more. So that way I could kind of curtail the number of hours, because a lot of technicians would just be like, I'll just keep working and make more money. And I found that was important. And then also, making sure they took time off. So I had, I had it so vacation time, PTO expired. So you had to use it. You couldn't keep just racking it up. And you couldn't also pile it all up at one time at the end of the year, because that was problematic to the company. So there were a lot of things like that I needed to do to kind of balance it, because it was hard for me to balance, but it was also hard to balance for the employees. And I think, as we have in the polls, I think this is something that it's on the it's the onus of not only the owner but also the technician. But the owner needs to take the leadership role in this, because I think we can't expect the technicians to often do the right thing with this when you have attached money to how much time they're working.
That's great points. And you mentioned the polls. Just to draw attention to those, if you haven't seen those, you can find them down at the bottom there. And we've got 3 questions. The first one's, do you or does your company have any concrete policies, procedures, or actions in place to actually address burnout, promote self-care? Most of the people are saying no. We've got about maybe my math not so good. We got maybe a third saying yes, and 2/3 saying no, or no that we know and we know that we should. Meanwhile, have you experienced burnout systems in the past 6 months? Yeah, like hasn't everyone? We got a few people who are saying no, not that I know of, and good for you guys. That's awesome. But man, if there's ever been a time where this is the potential for that has been ramped up, I think it's now. And then, Tom, the question that you're referring to, who bears more responsibility, owners, individual employees? We have a very diplomatic crew here. People are saying that the split goes equal. It goes both ways. You got to own it, and you also got to set up a good environment for it. So speaking of that, I know that Dan, you're here in the chat. Dan Comas is an MSP owner based in Long Island, and Dan's been around on the chats a bunch. Dan shared something in our Slack group. I'm going to dump the link to our Slack group here in the chat. So if you're not part of that, you haven't joined that Slack group yet, please do. We're carrying on conversations that we're having right now in that group. And Dan had something awesome that I want to share. And I want to ask Dan if he'd be up for coming on and talking about it, because he has gone out of his way to really, with one employee in particular, set very clear goals around personal and professional development and work with them. It's really awesome. And I'd love to have you on, Dan, to talk about that. So while we work that out, Heather, anything else that, as a COO and former HR, any other things that you can advise in terms of, a lot of good suggestions here about how you as an individual can take 5 minutes, but any other suggestions you have for owners and leaders?
Well, the importance of it, we always look at it, ourselves. Of course, we need to keep ourselves and our employees healthy, but there is a lot of benefits to your business by incorporating this. First off, if your employees are getting time to take to themselves, they will be there more. They'll have less days off. When they're there, they will be more charged and ready to go and be there for you. And it shows you care about them. How hard is it to hire for a new employee? If you show your employee you care about them and their mental health, they're going to be with you for a while. The other part of it, okay, so business owners, okay, you can understand why doing it for your employees, but for yourself, you might still be thinking, I don't have the time for it. One of the things that I have found is that when I step away is when my best ideas come. And I have talked to many people who feel the same way. If you start taking care of yourself and you give yourself that space, your brain that space to not be under the stress of this, then this, then this, then this, and you just let it go for a while, you are going to have some business epiphanies that are just going to blow your mind. So really, it is really important to start bringing that in, because it's going to grow your business.
That's great, Heather. And I was going to, it looks like Dan's coming back in. Such an important point, and gets right into some of the things that points you were making, Dan. Dan, thanks so much for coming on, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Happy New Year.
Same.
So Dan, I'm going to bring up on the screen.
Sure.
This is probably a little difficult for people to read, but if anyone's joined that Slack group, you can check out, we have a culture, hiring, retention channel. And well, I guess, rather than me just spouting off bullet points, maybe just talk through what was going on and what you guys decided to do, because it's really interesting.
So we had a new hire about last October, he started on with us, and we're really happy to have him. And he was a little green for the industry, but like everybody out there, you're not hiring that technical experience as much as you're hiring the person, right? Do they suit this industry? Can they make it at an MSP, right? And he has all of those traits. So great. On the team, let's go. And we set out some goals for a learning track for the next, 3 months, 6 months. It was kind of loose, but we said, okay, here's the things we want to learn. Let's go. And, all the work is getting done, and he's learning and he's moving along. But we had a hard time focusing on getting that training really completed in time. So we would go a couple of weeks, I'd check in and say, hey, how we doing? Oh, I didn't quite get there. Or, bottom line is it wasn't getting done. And the reality was that I was too busy to focus on making sure and like giving them the system and the accountability to get it done. And without that, without a lane, it's just not going to happen for everybody. Some people, pick up, grab it, go, and that's it. You can't stop them, right? But that's absolutely not the norm. So we were getting busier and busier as this year went on, and and in COVID, and we're in New York in March, everything is crazy. So we were like on major burnout streak through the year, and then we got to a point where we needed to add some help. And what we did was bring in a service delivery manager. And that really was the key for us, because that person was able to then assume the responsibility to help our team study, to put the guidelines in place for them, to monitor them, to attaboy them, to stay on them, like not over your shoulder, but to set up a path for them to succeed by keeping things in front of them, instead of just putting something 100 yards away and saying, all right, go there. We're marching down the field for a football reference, instead of just, throwing a 75-yard pass and winding up in the end zone. And, that was really helpful. And as far as, so now we have the track, but, what does it take to move those 10 yards at a time, to get those first downs? We had a really, really open discussion about, like, what do you want? You say you want to do these things, and I know you want to do these things, but we're not getting them done. So I put myself out there and said, hey, I may own this company. I may have been doing this for years, but I have failed at so many things I've tried. I have gotten things wrong. I have made every mistake you can possibly make, so take all that stuff, throw all that stuff out. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get it right. You're going to screw it up. You may cost us a customer, but if you are giving us your best effort and your heart is in the right place and you are trying to do the right thing, all that stuff is okay. Like, remove all those barriers, all those things you're afraid of, to take risks, but, stay on the path. Like, don't go blindly, trying shit, but don't be afraid to try something different. And, we could, I'm off in the weeds here, but.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what jumped out at me was first of all, just the attitude of, we are going to actively invest in a single employee. And then you mentioned here, I mean, so you talked with them, outlined very specific goals. And then you build in that key thing that Heather has mentioned too, which is accountability, right? And having things just kind of marked down, documented, basically. I mean, it's the same reason why, resolutions or things, if we tell people we're going to do them, it's going to increase the probability that we'll actually do it. Yeah. And then you were talking about having actually some financial incentives around that too. You were talking about specific trainings and having some goals there. But yeah, basically short-term, long-term goals, regular check-ins, and then you're actually going to be tying some compensation around this.
Yeah, so we moved to quarterly raises, essentially. So instead of trying to wait it out for the year, and keep track over those 12 months. Let's keep it shorter periods. Let's make short-term goals and compensate them appropriately and continue to add more short-term goals, because it adds up, right? If whatever the raise is for a year, if you just break it up into 4 quarters and keep it in front of you, you get there, you're getting to the same place, So that was definitely an effective tool. And it's working, it's working, and it's going to be the new standard that we have here, moving forward.
That's so awesome. And we see from Ray, Ray's commenting that you've got him beat, that he does semi-annual reviews and raises for the same reason. But you're going the extra mile.
I think Ray just likes the shirt.
Well, what's not to like? But yeah, having that kind of attitude and having things be broken down in a more approachable way. This is something that I picked up on as I was doing some research around this and prepping for this. I added, I'll bring it up here in a second, but I don't know if people are familiar with the book Atomic Habits or James Clear, but this whole idea of, you can set goals, but you're going to be way more likely to hit them if you're actually changing your habits. And he's got a ton of interesting things delving into science around how long it takes to actually establish a habit and change it. And this goes into some things that, Tom, you've kind of taken with your approach with you personally, and then also when you're an owner too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're probably referring to there is, if you start a habit, I like how Dan talked about it, like in small increments.
Yeah.
And goals along the way. I'm taking notes for, like if I was in an MSP again, Dan, that's like some of the HR things you do are amazing. But, I think James Clear talks about how you start a new habit and you keep doing it. It takes about 66 days at least, up to about 3 months, to where you don't think about it. It's part of your regular routine, and that's so important. And breaking up, making them very small, manageable things you can expect yourself to do or your employees to do. And it sounds like Dan's got a good grasp of that in how you kind of worked with this employee and set up expectations and, made it so it's manageable and they can take that on and be successful in the company.
Thank you. One of the big parts to it was proving their role within a company, and this goes for everybody. We started doing drawing out organizational charts and drawing out the workflow of our company and how things operate. We're small. There's 5 of us, so those things on our scale, don't always seem like the things you do when you're that size. Let's draw an organizational chart. Well, I don't have 15 employees. Why would I do that? No. It's about the responsibilities in that chart. It's not about the people in the chart. So by doing that, everybody got to see where their responsibilities were to one another, to the company, and help them better understand their role. So we did one for last year, and I made one for 5 years from now and said, hey, I see where you are on this one. Where do you want to be on this one? So help build a long-term plan. And then finally, at the end of the year, I wrote out a complete retrospective on what we did all year, where we were in January, how we got through the year, the problems that we encountered, the grind that we went through, the burnout that everybody felt, how we handled with everything, the changes we made, so that everybody could really see where we started last year, where we ended, and the 100 miles that we came because of everybody's absolute commitment to getting it done and being on the same team.
Hey, Dan, would you be up for, you shared it in the Slack group. You shared a PDF doc that has, it's titled Better Habits, and it's got a breakdown of some of the things that you're encouraging employees to shoot for. Is it okay if we share that here too?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, great. I'm going to pull it up on the screen, and I'll also, of course, if you join the Slack group, you can see it there. I'll also add this to the doc a little bit later. And before we dive in here, just for a second, I do want to address a comment. We got a question with someone asking about Atomic Habits. Ray mentioned that's a book that he and the team read, and it's great. I haven't actually even read it yet. I'm going to now that I've looked into it. But if you go to our resources doc, which I'll share the link again, but I included a link to, there's a website for it. There's an 8-minute video that goes kind of the overview of the key concepts behind it. And then I also included a link to this Twitter thread where a reader goes through a very cool thing, just point out key takeaways. And so you can be like me and kind of cheat and not actually have to read the book and just get some of the cool concepts. But it kind of ties in here because, I mean, the key word here is habits, right?
Yep. And again, I can't overstate the contributions of our service delivery manager in getting this stuff implemented and drawing out a lot of this. You know, this is absolutely a team effort here in this document. And, you know, it starts for us really with stand-ups and rundowns, like every day, just kind of like bookending everything for everybody. Everybody's involved, and it helps us make sure that nobody feels like they go off the rails or like they can't solve a problem or something's too far gone. It prevents things from getting buried, you know, lost. If someone has a ticket and they're like, I don't know how to do this, sometimes it gets pushed off and not accomplished. But by making sure that we address it and keep it in front of you all every day, it has to get addressed. So very, very, very effective. And then the simple steps of progressing a ticket. You know, if you always keep the ideas of where are we, what's the end goal, where are we going? And then like, what is the next step we need to take? I found that to be absolutely priceless for everything we do. You know, whenever you get stuck in any task, if you don't know what to do, or if it's just really hard, like what's the next step, right? What's right in front of you? How can you progress it? Whatever it takes to move it forward, even if it's one step, you don't have to go a mile, you go one step. Like I said, run the football, like you'll get there.
And so I guess, you know, why are we talking about this when we're talking about burnout? And I mean, this is how you avoid it, right? I mean, this is at least a contributing factor anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I guess it's like it's what you do to prevent getting there, you know.
Right.
And once you're burnt out, which we've all been, which I'm probably on fire behind my eyes right now. I don't even know anymore. But it's this to me and for us, this really helps us. You know, we've had it's back to what Tom was saying earlier about, you know, it coming from the attitude coming from the top down. Like I could have the best intentions, but if I get overstressed or there's just too much going on and that starts popping out, then everyone else feels that. And it becomes their habit and it becomes their standard operating procedure for the day. And I've seen it in front of me, you know, to have like a come to Jesus moment every now and then. And I've had enough of them where I, you know, just recognize like the way the company is going to go, the way if I want my team to be successful, I have to do everything in my power to keep it positive from the big chair, like I said, right? And, you know, I've really dove into it in the last year and a half, and it's worked, you know, at every turn, you know, failure is opportunity, right? There's so many people preach the stuff. It's almost cliche. You know, if you think about like a Tony Robbins or something like that, like people just, you start rolling your eyes. But, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk is a guy, you don't have to listen to his marketing stuff. You know, he's just it's positivity, right? It's something that you constantly feed yourself. And then that starts to emanate from you. And then that starts to emanate from your practice. So if I'm able to keep bringing that stuff in and keep genuinely, you know, trying to walk that line and live that life, that it's infectious. You know, just like we talked about, negativity is incredibly infectious. So the goal is to keep that away. So if you can maintain positivity and then you can be infectious with that, I mean, you're making everything around you better. So
yeah, I mean, that was another thing that jumped out from your story there, specifically with helping this one technician. He was becoming a very negative, kind of draining presence, it sounded like. And that's been turned around thanks to you guys just investing more time. Of course, it's like, in one way, it's crazy to think about like having to invest more time when you're, as an owner, you're already maxed out. But I mean, in your case, it sounds like you've been able to do it, especially with going back to Tom's point, finding some help, getting a service management leader on too, and that's helped. But Heather, I've seen you nodding a lot, and I wanted to give you a chance to jump back in. and maybe bring it back again to like, from a high level, a goal of, okay, yes, want to be positive, want to have set a good environment, a good example. And then again, like bring it back to, I guess, how do you actually, what are the first steps there? Because it's such a good goal, and then the next day's work comes and you're just like on fire again. So like, how do you actually get out of that bad rhythm?
Well, I am a very smiley, happy person, but sometimes that's a choice. Sometimes I don't feel smiley and happy, but whenever I'm going to be dealing with an employee or a customer, I am like, this person is having their own day, and I'm going to smile and make them feel good about their day. A lot of our customers go through Heather therapy as well. That's a side part of our sales process, because people are going through their own stuff, and I'm always ready to listen and try to help out there, and at least make sure they have learned how to breathe, even though I still haven't quite mastered it. But just slowing down and enjoying the day and how we can, but also teaching everyone that's working for you, how to deal with a difficult customer, how to have empathy. A lot of the times where we have frustration when dealing with customers is we're lacking that empathy to see what are they struggling with. So if we all can kind of be a little bit more empathetic, take those 5 minutes, even the therapeutic yell, that better out than in, even with anxiety. You want to get that out, because it'll stay in there and it will damage your relationships. It'll hurt your family, it'll hurt your coworkers, and then it will hurt yourself, and then all of the above. So finding ways to teach empathy to your coworkers, to yourself sometimes. I'm a big preacher of the compassionate geek. We have everybody here at Gozynta to read that, because the frustration sometimes we start to feel when we're working has to do with dealing with other people. But if we approach them with empathy, that starts to release a little bit. And then you have your 5-minute intentional cup of tea, and you're breathing, and go to the Calm app. I like that one as well. And I do Peloton 5-minute meditations, because they have all sorts of things to deal with frustration or positivity, and try to get yourself back in a better place. It just pays out tenfold.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe we can, we're kind of coming up on time a little bit. We still got about 10 minutes. I want to make sure that we give some people chances to ask any questions you have, of course. Also maybe share, like, what's the one thing, like what's your one thing where you give yourself a release valve, like your 5-minute breaks. Heather, you were talking about practicing mindfulness, having a cup of tea and trying to be fully present, giving that time just to you, just having, even just going into whatever it is you're doing and being like, this is my time. I'm going to give myself this time, and it's going to be on a regular schedule. I thought that was an important point.
Yeah,
Then,
one of mine is I take a bath every morning. That's my time. Nobody is going to bother me during it. I know probably takes less time to do a shower, but that's a way every single day I have that time that is just mine, that I can kind of decompress. My kids, we have 4 teenagers. They know not to bother me at that time. They've learned the hard way. So that is my time, and building those things into your schedule, so it's not like, oh yeah, I've got to do that self-care thing. It's just part of your day. I'm going to have tea, and this 5 minutes is going to be for myself. I'm not going to answer emails or text message or refresh CNN live news updates 50 times while I'm drinking it. That's not going to be for you. Don't bother doing it then.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, unplugging is such a core, crucial thing, especially now with just everything that's going on, and has been going on for forever. It feels like. Rachel calls out 4 teenagers. Wow, I think we buried the lead there. I think in terms of talking about your credentials, like HR manager previously, COO. Oh yes, 4 teenagers in your house, and you're able to actually remain calm and be smiling right now. So that's pretty good credentials right there.
Yeah.
Tom, I know for you, I mean, you've got a ton of things that you do. Maybe you can narrow it down a little bit, but I mean, yeah, share some of the things that you're finding or have been helpful for you.
Yeah, I lift every morning for an hour, 6 days a week, 7 a.m. And then I take after dinner. I'm big into this thing called 10-minute walks after dinner. Well, 10-minute walks after meals, but I generally do a 2 to 3 mile walk after dinner every day. And then I usually do 30 to 45 minutes of stretching, yoga type stretches in the evening while I'm kind of watching TV. So I have a lot of these things, a lot of these protocols, what we call biohacks, and increases in performance. I don't have 4 kids. I think I might have like a lot of time to devote to these things. And yeah, it's kind of like my big thing. I kind of ran myself into the ground a few years ago. When I was an MSP owner, did it, and then when I worked and was on the road a lot. And I definitely find that if I spend more time on these things and on myself, my work is better when I do work. And I think that's great. The exercise is definitely kind of the pivotal part for me, and that's where I get my relaxation. I will tell you one big thing is when I work out of any kind, I don't have my phone with me or anything like that. I use an iPod that's 10 years old, so I'm disconnected from everything else. I can focus just on what's in front of me.
I mean, yeah, the unplugging, I mean, that's a huge one that I'm going to be trying to do this year. And then the three of us talked about sleep a lot too, and how important that is. I know that, I mean, I've got 2 young kids and definitely went through periods where that was not happening at all. And I paid a big price for it. Thankfully it's gotten a lot better. But yeah, I mean, anyone else in the chat, if you got something that's working for you, please feel free to add it. We did have some really cool comments here. I'm going to scroll back up and try to find, I apologize, I didn't catch the name of the person who shared this, but we have, this is interesting. Blue, I'm not going to be able to pronounce it right. It's Blunivus. But we have this outsourced company that for a set amount of fee, you can outsource kind of like mental health resources for your employees, which is pretty interesting. So anything like that, resources, feel free to add them in the chat. I'm going to add them to this doc, like I mentioned, and then that'll be a resource that you guys can come back to. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had another one that I thought was pretty helpful as well. And I saw we have some people from the Netherlands here, so I was very excited.
Yes.
Although but I have started learning Dutch. I have a very hard time putting away business. My husband and I co-founded Gozynta. We started dating over our love for business, so we have a very hard time putting away business ever. And even when I read, it's through the lens of business. And I know you guys all go through this. But when I'm learning Dutch, I have to be fully present in that moment to learn it. And so I found that is a great way to give my brain a break, is to learn something that maybe you never have thought about learning before. You know, it could be the guitar, it could be the piano, it could be a language. You're probably not going to be playing at Carnegie Hall. It's something really just for yourself and to give your brain a break and to use it in a bit of a different way.
That's absolutely, that's amazing. It's so important to truly break away when you have a mind like yours, or you're always thinking on something. You're happy to think about business, but you need to put yourself in a place where you're completely uncomfortable. You have absolutely no experience or chance for success unless you completely give yourself to it. You give it all of your energy, you focus, and you dedicate yourself. And it's going to take a long time before you start speaking Dutch.
Yes.
But I don't think there's a better way to grow as a human being than to just commit yourself to something that's completely, you never thought was possible until you get it done. It's awesome.
It is awesome. And Kelvin, you know, it being like maybe 11 o'clock at night there is probably, he was there at the beginning. He may not be here now. I was hoping he would be on because the Dutch thing, I thought he'd be so excited about it. And also, that's not the first line that came up. Tom, you had an article that, or it was an article that you shared. The Dutch art of doing nothing.
Yeah, concept of Nixon. I found out about a couple of years ago. It's like that you get your best ideas when you're not focused, when you're taking time for yourself. And that's kind of like what I do with my walks in the evening. I kind of, try to be disconnected and, come back with answers to things. And learning, it was the big thing for me as an MSP owner to learn that it was all right to take time off and to do less and to push things out a bit, because my work was better when I did. And I was nicer to people. I got along better with people, and I gave them my time too. And so that's been a big thing is I think it's a big thing for MSP owners out there is looking for that level of balance and what it takes. And I think the Nixon, which is the art of doing nothing, which I think it's a Dutch term, right? And I think that's the big thing I like people to take away from this is that it's all right. You're building your business, you feel like you're pulled in a lot of different directions, but if you allow that to control you and be your whole basis of everything, it's probably going to be to the detriment of the business. And you spend more time on yourself will be it. And I'd like to hear, Dan, what are a couple of your big things that you do? I know you're into self-care as well. We've had some conversations about it outside of this.
My big thing for the last couple of years has been Muay Thai. Like starting essentially a dangerous martial arts practice in my late 30s, where most of the people that I've trained with and learned with are in their early 20s, and they're all athletes. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, which I'm clearly so excited by hearing the story, because, that's it. I love it. It's also, the fitness side of it. It's the hardest I've ever worked. So I get the actual physical benefits of it. My heart is in I'm in great health, and I'm learning something that's really fun, right? You spar with somebody and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, you're play fighting as an adult, but it's really, really hard, and it's really taxing on your body. And you have to, the thing is, you have to push yourself so hard to just participate that it takes an incredible level of commitment to be there. And, obviously there's a sense of community with it, and you have a special relationship with the people that you train with, like any sports team or anything like that. That's my favorite thing. I love to go hiking, backpacking, disappear. When I go on vacation, I've thrown 50 pounds on my back and gone 10, 11 miles. Like, all right, there's no technology here. I'll see y'all in a couple of days, and really cut the cord.
It's amazing. And we all see the comments. We probably all made them too, like how we're all going to be potato farmers. There's all those, everybody has those days where it's like, I'm done, I'm out. But actually taking those days, we actually do cut the cord. Before we wrap up here, Tom, it's such a good segue. Why don't you tell the story you had where I think this was your first actual vacation as an owner?
Yeah, this is back in like 2007. And, so I finally got to this point. That was 7 years into my MSP. I got to the point where I had a good number of employees. I had people to do things. And I decided it was time to go on my first real vacation. And I went with this young professionals group to Italy, and arrived in Italy. But before that, I had my office manager track down for me. This is back in the day of BlackBerry. And I had him track down I had to get a BlackBerry World Edition so that I could activate it in Europe and stay connected. And I got it, and I'm in the Rome airport, and I'm at the Vodafone store, and I'm like, I sat there for like 5 minutes and holding this BlackBerry, and then I put it away, and I got to the hotel that night, and I emailed work, and I said, I'm not activating my phone while I'm here. And it was one of the smartest things I ever do, and I look at it as one of kind of the breakthrough moments of my MSP that allowed me to scale that business. Because when I did that, I separated myself from it, and I gave myself time off, and I decided that was okay. But the most important thing I did was I enabled those employees back at the office to become like masters of the business and to own it in a way. And they became so much better, and I gave them that responsibility, and everything worked out. Everything was okay. And I totally disconnected for like 2 weeks. I would check in once a day by email, and it was probably one of the smartest business decisions I ever made.
It's such, such a great story. I know you were talking with Ray about that too, and Ray was definitely nodding his head. Dan's nodding too.
Yeah.
So Kelvin is back. Thank you, Kelvin, our resident Dutch MVP. Yes, he says, okay, yep, it's the process of doing nothing. I was asking him what the direct translation is. It's nothinging.
We were talking about it. I run across some really great articles about it a couple years ago, and we'll probably share those as well. But it's something that I practice very well. I find I get my best ideas when I kind of just am doing nothing. Take time for just a walk.
Well, hey, I wanted to. We're right at the hour here, and I'm interested in giving people their time and a chance to maybe have a habit and have a end the day on a note where they have time in themselves. I think we'll close out. But before we do, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Heather, so much for having the suggestion for suggesting this topic so we can kick it off this way and coming on. This is so great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was great being here. Thank you.
And Dan, thank you so much for sharing your story coming on. Always an inspiring pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
And I like that shirt. You're raising the bar every time.
I get it.
I like that.
It's true.
And Tom, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah,
it's so great. Thank you, everybody on the chat. Before you all start signing off, or more of you start signing off, let me just bring up this doc one more time because there's a couple of announcements. So the first one is just a reminder, all the things we're talking about, these links, we have a ton of links here, so check it out. Use this doc to go read about things. There's the videos from Heather. There's symptoms from burnout that you can check out. But there's also those videos from Heather, a guide about short baby steps. If you're not ready to do the learn Dutch or ready to do Muay Thai, like there's 5-minute things that you can do. There'll be that iterative approach to better self-care. There's Atomic Habits. There's a ton of stuff here. And then I also wanted to call out, so we're going to take a little bit of an extended break. We usually do MSP Live Chats every 2 weeks. Our next event's going to be 3 weeks from now, but it's going to be a big one. And it's not going to be an official MSP Live Chat, but it's going to be our second annual MSP Security Summit. So we did this last year. We're again teaming up with the folks at Huntress. We're also going to have people from incident response provider from Trusted Sec who's going to come on, talk about incidents he's actually worked with MSPs and lessons learned there. We're going to have Alex Fields from IT Pro Mentor on to talk about how stacks are evolving, how to package your solution, and digging into a lot to what's available already, how to get more out of the tools you have, and a lot of stuff about Microsoft that's really interesting. And then we're going to have a big panel. We're going to have Kyle. We're going to have Ryan Weeks, Datto CISO, and some other big names that we can't quite announce quite yet. But we're going to have a big discussion on what's next. There's going to be some elephants in the room in terms of supply chain attacks. We'll get that out of the way, but we'll also talk about some really cool trends and, more importantly, like actionable priorities. Kelvin, I've talked with him. He's got some cool things he's going to be adding too. So a lot of good things to look forward to with that. So please check out we got a registration landing page set up. Sign up for that, and we'll be sending you guys emails to let you know. But big event to look forward to. And in the meantime, thanks everybody again. I hope you can. I hope this gives some good ideas to just take some more time for this year to be a good year of setting some good habits, self-care.
Right.
All right,
everyone.
Yeah. Thanks
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Take care.